That big part, that big chunk that we're all used to receiving is the input. The input from the teacher. So the input can be a lecture, the input could be a case study, the input could be whatever it is that you're giving the students in a way of their learning. And it could also be part of the student participation that's involved in the learning as well. And the two sort of should go hand in hand. This like checking for understanding, giving a part of the information, and then checking with the students that they understand, that they know, that they can connect to it, that sort of thing. So what are some tips for giving this input? Projecting one's voice, moving from behind the podium, pausing when there are important points to be mentioned, going through the various explanations, giving clear directions. As somebody mentioned before, clarity is so important, being very, very specific and precise. And always, really being clear about the really important concepts. Before adding more complexity, being clear that everybody's on the same page. Often we're so enamored with our own understanding of something, we seldom take the time to see if other people are we're right there with us. So training ourselves to do that is also so key. In the construction of the lesson, you're thinking about what is it that I really want to say? And often when we first start teaching, we just want to give everything. And it's like discriminating, what is really important. So, in this context, less is more sometimes. So it's not, you're not overwhelmed by the content. You're just choosing, because the students can read for themselves a lot of the material that's there. So you just want to have some elements that you're telling them are really key. So you want to be able to discriminate what's worth being familiar with from what's really important to know. But ultimately, as we said before, is this enduring understanding that we want them to get. To walk away, so whether it's 5 months from now, or a year from now, or a few years from now, they remember the essence of what it was that you were trying to teach them, of what was happening in that particular course or in that particular lesson. So deciding when you're doing your lesson planning what it is that's essential is a part of good lesson plan. So you want your students to participate. You want to change and vary the activity every 15 minutes, because when you're talking for more than 15 minutes, students really begin to get bored, and pretty soon we're going to have an activity very quickly in order for me to model this. And so you allow your students to reflect, to talk with one another, and so you want to be able to introduce some balance. Very, very important to have some balance. So what I want to do now is to model some strategies. And so what I want you to do is, as you're watching some of these, I want you to decide what you like about the way that they teach, what it is that you perhaps would improve upon. So this is one teacher who likes to use the use of metaphors, as she'll describe.
What I try and do is, and this is the way I teach any new concept, is I'll start off with an example. So I haven't explained to them how it works. They have no clue what we're doing, but we'll put up an example and say, okay, this is what's happening. In some cases, I'll actually come up with a metaphor, explain how this works in real life, with the idea, especially in computers, where computers are designed to basically emulate our life. It's not us adapting to them, but it's the computers being able to do what we normally do. So I start off with a real life situation, such as I have one example for washing hair, for loops. I mean, this is something that everybody does, and they can relate to it. So it allows them to see how that concept applies in everyday life. These are the standard kinds of instructions you'll see on a shampoo bottle. Wet hair, pour, lather, rinse, repeat, dry hair. Now these are aimed for who? Humans, okay? So we know what it means to wet hair, we know what it means to pour, etc. I give this to a robot. What's wrong with this? It's not? When does it stop? Okay, repeat. Repeat what? Which statements am I repeating? As a human, what are you going to repeat? Lather, rinse, well, pour, lather, rinse, right? I mean, once you've rinsed your hair, you're not going to go and wet your hair again, it's already wet. I know that as a human. That what I'm repeating is what? The pour, the lather, the rinse. But you give this to a robot, this is not clear what you said over here. So this is a little bit clearer. Wet hair, oh, well, hair is dirty. My little robot knows how to know to test for hair dirty or not. So what am I doing? I'm pouring shampoo, I'm lathering, and I'm rinsing. And the way I've indented it, it's sort of obvious now that this is what's being repeated. And once my hair is clean, I come out and I dry my hair. So this makes a little bit more sense, right? Agree?
Okay, what do you think about that?
Didn't seem like she really took into account her students' responses very much. She wasn't responding to their answers. I didn't hear what the student said, but it seemed like it didn't change her response. Like her response would have been the same.
What else might she have been done? What else might have been done in the setup of the session? Is there anything else that you would think could have been done differently, or, I mean, yes.
Maybe some students would have need some more time to reflect, to think about it, and she was very quick.
Okay. Anything else that you noticed in terms of the actual lesson plan? Was there a plan? Did you notice objectives?
Well, overall I thought it was a good example to show how some terms could be or could not be operational in the context of whatever is that field. So for that I thought it was a good example because it showed how you cannot simply assume that a robot or a computer would read your terms because they have to be operational.
So it's a good example then of the use of examples, of the use of
yes, for that specific purpose.
yeah. So it's a good strategy then to keep in mind. So it may not be the entire plan, like a whole lesson plan, but it's an example of a good questioning strategy.
Maybe the strength of the example comes from the fact that everybody does wash their hair and everybody could relate.
It's something everybody could relate to, exactly. That's the main part that I was hoping somebody would get, is the fact that everybody could relate to it. It wasn't something out there, very, very abstract. She tried to find a really good example, like a really good question that she could ask students where they would begin to make that connection between something as abstract as computer programming to a real-life example. So she challenged herself to say, what example could I find that would really bring this home, this point home?
At the same time, I think she could have milked that example a little bit more, because if the purpose of the example was to show that the algorithm is a way of giving an instruction to a robot, she could have said a little bit more about how many of you here have read bad instructions on the shampoo bottle? Why was it unclear? You know.
Exactly. So that's the thing, is that when we look at examples, we say, okay, what is the strength, but what else can one do? What else can one do to really bring out the richness of it? You see? And so what we try to do in some of the workshops that we give is we have the students do little mini lessons on a topic like this, and then everybody in the group gives feedback the way that you did. You know, if you had done this, this might have been better. I was lost at the beginning when you first began. Maybe a better introduction. The example you could have gone further with it. I liked it because of this reason, and so on. And so it's a really valuable, so when you first begin teaching, if you have the opportunity to be in a group with other graduate students who can give you that kind of feedback, or with other new professors who are also starting out, who could give feedback of this sort. I'm not sure what universities that you're from and so on, but many universities in Canada have this. It's such a useful thing when you first plan your lesson to get feedback on it.